So in this last section of thinking about and using the CRAP test to evaluate our information, the last on the criteria is P for purpose. And we were talking about, what is the information that we're looking at, fact, opinion, is it propaganda, is it biased in some way? And so, what are one of the things that can bias how people report, and we saw that in the Petroleum Institute report, when people have a vested interest, critical thinkers have to ask the questions, what's behind the information. And so we see here from this article that there's big money involved in drilling for natural gas in the state of Pennsylvania. And so in what way may the possibility for big money be influencing the information that's getting out to the consumer? So, we can look at some examples. And in this section, think about how you would apply the CRAP test. But we'll go through this part pretty quickly. But I think it's very interesting when you follow the money piece of the story, what that can tell you. So not only are jobs being created for oil and gas drilling, but also now water treatment firms. So, clearly there's an issue with the water that needs to be treated that's being used, that water treatment firms are now getting into the act. So on the one hand, that's good for jobs, for people in the area, but what does that say about what's happening to our water? And another source that I found, again from Nature, the story starts to take kind of a strange turn. So in this, at the time, recent article looked at research on fracking and said that there's little or no evidence that fracking has contaminated groundwater. And that made my kind of ear stand up and say, little or no evidence. That's not really what we've seen so far. According to a university-funded report from the researchers assembled by the Energy Institute at the University of Texas at Austin. So the University of Texas at Austin is a very good school, and clearly they have some special group of professors studying at something called the Energy Institute, and they released a report on February 16th at the American Association for the Advancement of Science in Canada. So this is a really prestigious conference, and they said that that it wasn't really caused by fracking. And so I wanted to take a closer look at this. So I found the Energy Institute at the University of Texas at Austin, and this was back in February of 2012, just a year ago, and I poked around and found that they had published a report, a press release, and a booklet that they were handing out, and also were presenting at this very prestigious conference, saying, which the name of the report was Assessing the Real and Perceived Consequences. So not the truthful, but just what people think consequences of shale gas development. What's fact and what's fiction? And in this case, they were saying that really the facts don't hold up, that fracking causes pollution or contamination to groundwater. And I thought, wow. This is coming from a very prestigious university, and this is really counter to some of the other things that we've seen so far. So how can this be? So as a critical thinker, I'm holding my mind open, but I want to investigate further. And so I went, and you can actually look at this video of these professors presenting at this conference. It's a recorded session and very interesting. If I were you, I would take a little break, pause this, and go out to the website and take a look at the actual presentation at this conference, where they say, no, there's no cause for alarm of fracking. And sure enough, if we look at the annual meeting notes, this was back on February 16th, where they presented these findings, and then a few months later in July, the Science Insider reports that this report was criticized for apparent conflict of interest, which, if you look under the purpose section in the CRAP test, means there was possible bias in this report. And so remember, there's lots of money involved and at stake, and people saying that this is safe or this is not safe. And so I went back and I put in Google just a very simple search. I said, who are the donors to the Energy Institute at the University of Texas at Austin? And sure enough, there's ConocoPhillips, a big energy company, gives $1.5 million to this fund to fund this Energy Institute. And indeed, almost shortly thereafter, they put a news release on their website to say that they were going to form a special panel of outside experts to review this report that came out that says that hydraulic fracturing is not harmful, that the people that did the report should have made known their ties to the energy industry that might possibly have influenced the report in an inappropriate manner. And this is a pretty big wow. Because on the surface you could say, well, this is the University of Texas at Austin. They certainly have authority. We can trust their accuracy. It's certainly relevant information and it's current. It just came out. But then if we dig a little bit deeper into purpose, you could see with just a simple Google search, we actually found what was a very big breaking story at the time, that this report that could have been used in all kinds of ways has now been called into question because of its purpose. And so, when I really looked at the video, it was kind of sad to see people who were very well respected in their field. And what they really should have done was just been very honest about the sponsors of that institute. And still, the science may still be good, and it still may be a report with high integrity and truthfulness, but they just lost all their credibility in the fact that they didn't divulge the funding source. So when you go back to our initial question of whether fracking causes harm to our drinking water, it's not an easy question, right? And for people who won't take the time to think critically about where the information that's coming in, that's changing the story, that's creating the story, that ultimately makes consumers make up their mind one way or another, and eventually you'll vote on at the ballot box, is a very daunting task. But with tools like the CRAP test, you can very quickly and very systematically go through the criteria that can help you not be at the mercy of, what people are telling you. You can take control back and say, if I put my mind to this and I use the tools that I have, I can think critically and I can make up my own mind. I can have an informed opinion of which I can support it and say I had good, reliable sources. My opinion comes from these places and they are reliable because, or these things that I'm reading or hearing about in the news, I'm skeptical because, and these are the reasons why. I'm not sure about the sources and whether there was bias or the authority. So you get the idea to use that CRAP test to help you think through the real issues of our time. The environment impacts us in real ways, our health, and the health of our family. So these are not unimportant questions. They're very important and significant questions that impact all of us.